Welcome into another edition of the FutureSox RoundUp. My name is Elijah Evans, and I'm joined by my co-host Jeff Cohen today. We're back. We are so back. We're recording this on Wednesday morning, the 26th. Tomorrow is opening day. The time has come, Jeff. I think this episode will air on opening day, probably, maybe even the day after. But it's baseball season. Baseball has arrived. Major League Baseball starts fully for the White Sox on Thursday. Charlotte AAA starts Friday, so we're basically right into minor league season, which is our bread and butter as well. So everything is getting started this week. We are getting some information, which is cool. Somehow it's a day before opening day, and the White Sox still have not announced their official roster for opening day, which is I think Will Venables said they were going to wait till the last minute. I didn't quite expect it to be literally the day of opening day that they announced the roster. So a bit of a surprise there, but all things considered. Um, we have an idea of the way things are going to shake out at this point. I think the only thing we're really not sure about at this point is the bullpen, maybe one or two bench spots. It's clear that pretty much every top hitting prospect and every hitting prospect in general is going to be in Charlotte still. It doesn't sound like any of the top young guns on the hitting side are making the roster. And then on the pitching side, right, there's a lot of the lineup there. The rotation seems to be pretty clear. They haven't technically confirmed Shane Smith as the 5 starter, but it seems like it's going that way. Bullpen's kind of a toss up still. I think there's a few guys that are locked in, but I think we really don't actually know exactly how the bullpen's going to shake out. Honestly, that's the one thing I think I've been the least clear on all offseason, and we're still not totally sure about. So, how you feeling, Jeff? It's almost baseball season here.
I'm headed over to the ballpark this afternoon for Sergio Santos's introductory press conference. Supposedly, some ball players will be there. We don't know which ones just yet. Batting practice tomorrow, the first game Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then next Tuesday, the Kannapolis has a media day on Wednesday. The White Sox, two affiliates in Kannapolis and Winston, will play each other in the FutureSox Showdown game that we are
Nice.
sponsoring. So something going on every day now. And
Yeah.
down in North Carolina, we're pretty familiar with the White Sox not announcing a roster until the day before the season starts. And that's kind of standard operating procedure in the minor leagues down here.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely how it goes in the minor leagues. I think for the most part, it's surprising to a degree in the major league level. I think usually there's an expectation of a little bit more clarity in general there. At this point in the season, I think a lot of MLB teams have already announced their roster. That's why people are like, "Oh, where's the White Sox roster?" But I kind of expected it with just the intrigue in this season and the way that they're handling when guys are going to come up and who's going to be up and all the injuries too doesn't help, right? So like there's a lot of still like question marks in play here. We will see what happens, but at this point, it does seem like both Andrew Benintendi and Austin Slater are going to make the roster, which is cool because I think, a few weeks ago, it didn't seem like they were going to be healthy at that point. But on the flip side, Mike Tauchman is on the IL. Josh Rojas is on the IL. So, a lot of the in and outs, I think there's some guys that'll be up and down off the roster throughout the first month of the season. It's going to be a little bit of shifting things around as they come. But in general, ready for baseball. Fired up, excited. The minor league stuff is cool. Yesterday, I was on a Zoom with Paul Janish and the media, kind of checking in with the minor league stuff, getting a status report on just all of the whereabouts of the top prospects and where they're going to be playing this season, which is super exciting because the White Sox are being, I would say, borderline aggressive with some of the prospects in a good way, in a way that we've talked about as a possibility this offseason, but now we see it coming into reality. So let's kind of talk through some of these key notes just from each level. We're going to keep this episode pretty quick. We're just going to kind of dive into some key roster assignments. And then from there, next week, we'll really be able to talk about every single minor league roster when we have the full rosters at our hands. But for now, let's just talk about some of the keynotes that we noticed and some of the things that we kind of can pluck out from what I learned yesterday, from what we've seen online, everything in between. We'll start at the Charlotte level. One of the big takeaways for me yeah, it seems like Nick Maestrini, Jairo Iriarte are going to be leading that rotation. We kind of knew this already, right? Like with the Bush injury, the Thorpe injury, now the Mason Adams injury, unfortunately, all those guys getting Tommy John, really unfortunate for sure, to say the least, obviously. Mason Adams seems like it's not 100% set yet if he's getting Tommy John or not, but he's definitely trending that direction, and they're checking on him and doing tests on him this coming week. And then Drew Thorpe already is getting his Tommy John for sure. Kai Bush already had Tommy John, right? So that Charlotte rotation is gone from a really deep rotation, Jeff, to a pretty thin one, honestly, and one that's going to be filled out by guys like Owen White and Justin Dunn, who were brought into the organization to kind of, see what's left in the tank, right?
Yeah, it really casts a bit of a pall over the start of the season because of many things we were watching in the minor league system. At the top of the list was watching to see how all this great starting pitching depth sorted itself out.
Right.
And all these injuries have just turned that calculus upside down. It's just so tough. So,
Yeah, for sure. The injuries are brutal. The pitching injuries it's up and down. Every level we see it, right? At this point. I mean, there's guys that would have been at every affiliate that had a pitching injury now in the spring. And it's unfortunate, but like we've said, you really can't have enough pitching depth. And it might seem like the White Sox have too much pitching depth, but no, they don't. There's
yeah,
never enough pitching depth.
yeah.
There really is never enough true pitching depth in Major League Baseball these days. And, I think that Iriarte and Nick Nastrini are going to be the guys that are going to get a crack at it, right? I think that if a starter in the bigs were to go down, those are the two guys that you're hoping can still take that step, right? But I think both those guys are in kind of a prove it year in terms of if they can be a starter. And I think that they're going to start in the rotation and they're going to get a chance to be in the rotation all year. But this is kind of the year they gotta start showing growth as a starter for both those guys who were, high level prospects last year and the year before, right?
Yeah. And so what did Paul Janish have to say about the Charlotte roster in particular?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of young guys. It's going to be a lot of the young hitters. I think he mentioned it's going to be Caro and Teal splitting time at catching, mostly DHing when they're not catching. It sounds like they will mix in a little at first base here and there, but primarily those two are going to be splitting the catching and DH role back and forth in a platoon way in Charlotte, which is kind of what we had always expected, right? They're going to let those guys get reps. They need to make sure both of them are catching at least a few days a week each to keep that rolling. Colson will be there. He'll be playing shortstop. It sounds like Mydroth will be playing a combination of second, third, and then backing up Colson at shortstop, probably more second than anything else. So I think you're going to get a Mydroth, Colson Montgomery middle infield, which is pretty fun for sure. That's going to be a good one to watch. I think, it sounds like pretty much everybody of that, older, higher level hitting prospects will be in that Charlotte lineup. And then Jake Eder is another interesting one. I thought this from talking to him and from seeing the way they were using him in spring training, but he's going to be a bullpen guy. It doesn't sound like it sounds like they want to keep him in a multi-inning role to keep that kind of ability for him to start if needed. I think Jake Eder's just a reliever at this point. I think they might not want to say that directly because of the implications of the trade and because of the factors with the Jake Berger trade and him being, so heavily. Berger's been, Eder's been a very scrutinized player because he was part of a trade. It's not his fault. I think it's kind of unfair, unfair blame that people put on him. I get the organization that people don't love that trade. I understand. But I think Eder is a guy that in a bullpen role could frankly be very good. And I think there's going to be a lot of fun bullpen arms actually in that Charlotte roster. A lot of guys that don't make the roster in the big leagues, whether it's, from Trey McGough to I think Peyton Pillette will be there either in Birmingham or Charlotte, but will be there soon. Another fun note, he didn't say where Rikui Nishida is going to be. He said he's going to wait to tell he's going to wait to tell Nishida himself this week where he's going to be heading. Kind of got the energy that it could be Charlotte. I don't think it probably realistically is Birmingham for now. But I did get the sense from the questions on Nishida that like he will be in Charlotte this year at some point or another.
Oh, that'd be, you know how I feel about that. That's
Yeah,
that really adds a heck of an exciting element to
for
any
sure.
baseball game. So I'd love to see it. Yeah, I'm always curious if he's going to be playing the infield, outfield, or a little bit of.
Who knows? I mean, at this point, so we'll get to this as we go down the levels, but the middle infield's pretty crowded, honestly. It's more
Right.
crowded than I think most people realize. And I think from yesterday, it seems like we pretty much have the middle infield set at every level, honestly, which is interesting to head into the season with that kind of situation because it's pretty locked down of who's going to be playing where in the middle infield spots. And there's going to be obviously backups at every level, but it's not going to be, there's really not room for Nishida to carve out a role at second base, I don't think. So my guess is he's going to be mostly playing left field. That's kind of the gauge I get. But I could see him. His versatility is still big for him and his development. Birmingham is where the big story comes in, Jeff. That's where the big story comes in, and it's going to be. I'm going to have to get myself back to Birmingham this summer. I don't know how I'm not gonna. It confirmed yesterday that the rotation in Birmingham will start with Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, and Grant Taylor. All three of the big three, as I'm dubbing them, are going to be in Birmingham as rotation to start the year. Pretty crazy, honestly. I mean, this is. Yeah, I don't know what to say about it. We wanted this. I honestly did not think that we were going to make that move, but I think Grant Taylor just being so dominant in spring training just made it feel silly to put him in high A, right? I think it's like his stuff is just too good to be in pitching in Winston, and for that reason, even if he's only pitching 3-4 innings to start for now, because they're going to be very cautious with him, you've got your three best pitching prospects and three top 100 pitching prospects in Birmingham together in the same rotation. All I got to say is, man, I would not want to be a hitter in the Southern League this season because that would, I mean, can you go into a series on a Tuesday and you've got Noah Schultz coming in at 6'10" from the left side from a funky arm slot, throwing 98 at you. Then you've got the first round pick in Hagen Smith coming in and dominating the way he dominated in college, probably. And then you get through two lefties back to back days, and you feel beaten down as a lineup. And then you got Grant Taylor coming in pumping 101 from the right side with 7 feet of extension. It's a ridiculous trio. Not 100% clear who's going to fill out that rotation there. I'm guessing it's going to be some combination of Riley Gowans, Tyler Schweitzer, sooner than later, potentially Aldrin Batista. I think Lucas Gordon will be in Birmingham at some point this season, if not early in the season. Definitely didn't get the exact clarity there. We'll know more about that next week. But, those three are going to headline that rotation, which instantly makes that pitching staff must-watch baseball pretty much.
So a couple of questions and comments. I'm assuming Gallons and Schweitzer are probably first men up to Charlotte if needed.
Seems like it, right? I think that, the gauge is that these three guys are going to be in Birmingham for a little while, right? Like, I don't think it's like, oh, they're going to start in Birmingham, but they're going to go up soon. I don't know if any of them pitch in Charlotte much. If they do pitch in Charlotte, it's probably briefly. Like, I think that the plan is, at least for the first half of the season, for these guys to grow together, to work together, and to be in Birmingham.
Right. And then, obviously, the White Sox have to be a little overly cautious about protecting pitchers, given what happened to the staff in the spring. At the same time, at some point, they are going to want to get those big three studs on a 5-day rotation schedule and away from a once-a-week schedule.
It sounds to me like there is It sounds to me like the expectation is 5 days, which, it's going to be tricky. I just think it's going to be very limited innings, right? So the thing with Noah Schultz last year is Noah Schultz had never pitched on a 5-day schedule because he didn't pitch in college. He didn't have that experience. So last year it was easier to go to that 6-day because he had never done that. Now, for him, they need to get him on a 5-day, right? And Hagen Smith and Grant Taylor have pitched on a 5-day in college. Or not a 5-day, but they pitch the once a week in college, but they have that rotational type of experience when you're in college, and when you're pitching, and you schedule it ahead of time, and you feel it out, right? Like, that's just kind of how it goes. I think that it will be a 5-day, honestly, but I think it will be limited innings. I think that the goal for Schultz and Smith is to be throwing 5 innings to start, at least. I think with Noah throwing 4 innings last year, being maxed at 4 innings, the goal is to get him 5 innings on a regular basis, I think. And that goes for Hagen Smith as well, who pitched, he pitched a similar amount of innings as Noah last year, between college and then his brief stint in Winston last year for Hagen. So those guys are ready. Grant Taylor, I think, can handle a 5-day. I just think it'll be less innings. My guess with him is he'll be kind of similar to Noah Schultz last year, where he gets capped at 4 innings, and you see 4 great innings out of him, and that's enough, right? You don't need more than that from him right now. You really don't need to push these guys further at this point, because right now it's all about staying healthy, developing their stuff, and letting them work, because there's some pitchers where you just their stuff is going to be good enough. Like, I just don't think that's the question here. Like, it's not like, oh, we need to figure out how Grant Taylor is going to get batters out in Double-A. Like, no, Grant Taylor was getting batters out with ease in spring training against big league hitters, right? Like, he's going to do fine, and these 3 guys, their stuff is good enough. It's just about continuing to grow the command and letting them stay healthy, keeping them on a routine that works for them.
Yeah.
Another big note from Birmingham. This was a kind of surprising one. William Bergoya is going to start the season in Birmingham. William Bergoya was kind of a standout, I would say, in spring training. A guy that, definitely turns a little heads. He got into a few big league games, had some really big at-bats. He, was very productive from all I've heard on the backfields, right? This is a guy that I think was, not someone who is super high on radars in terms of prospects. A small middle infielder, left-handed bat, very contact-oriented. But he hit 300 last year, and he stole a bunch of bases. And he's only 20. He's only 20 years old. He's gonna be 20 years old this entire season. So you got a 20-year-old middle infielder who played in High A all of last year, and now he's going to be in Double-A for the White Sox with the Barons, and he's going to form a middle infield tandem with Jacob Gonzalez. So what we heard is that Jacob Gonzalez will be primarily playing shortstop. Bergoya will primarily be the second baseman. They'll switch off on occasions to give them versatility, but that will be the middle infield core there in Birmingham. Will be primarily Bergoya and Jacob Gonzalez, which is interesting. I think Bergoya is someone that is kind of popped up on the radar a little bit more, and I'm excited to see what he looks like at the Double-A level.
Yeah, Bergoya flew under the radar a little bit last year, but had a really solid year and clearly got a lot of run in spring training this year.
Yeah.
And, maybe he's the next guy in a long line of middle infielders who just came out of nowhere, like Brooks Baldwin, even going all the way back to Romy Gonzalez. I mean, we've had these, year after year, some guy just blows through Birmingham and Charlotte and works his way to Charlotte. So
Yeah, at only 20, I think Bergoglia's still probably going to be in Birmingham most of the year, if not the whole
sure,
year, I think, just because of his age, right? But I think if we could see him step up in Birmingham, I mean, if he can, the power is not there. I don't think he's going to be a guy that ever hits for much power. If he could tap into a little bit more impact in addition to stealing 27 bags like he did last year, while doing pretty good contact skills, bat to ball, I'm excited to see what it looks like at the next level for sure. And the outfield there, I think, is going to be pretty similar. DJ Gladney sounds like, Wilfred Veras, Jacob Burke. It seems like that Birmingham outfield is going to be kind of Terrell Tatum, I think. It should be a pretty similar outfield to what we saw last year. Just kind of a little bit, the upper levels of the outfield are kind of just like we'll see if anybody can take a step type of levels. And I think I'm hoping those guys take a step. And I think, a second year of experience in Birmingham for some of those players could be really good for them. I'm just curious to see what that'll look like. But yeah, that's the gist of the Birmingham stuff that we got. And then moving down to Winston, so we expected Winston to maybe have some of these top pitchers and hitters. And
yeah,
it does seem like Winston's going to be a little bit slower in terms of the high end guys until later in the season because of how loaded Kannapolis is going to be, which we'll get to next. But Winston's still going to have some intrigue for sure. Confirmed that Sam Antonacci will be starting in Winston. Love to hear that. So along with Casey Salke, two of the draft picks from last year are going to both be in Winston. So that's great to hear. Antonacci, we've been raving about him all offseason. We saw him in spring training, just clearly too good for Canny. And there's other guys that need innings in Canny now too. So it sounds like Antonacci, along with Gerald Perez, will be the middle infield in Winston. The organization is they said that Antonacci will primarily be playing second, mixing in at shortstop and third base, while Gerald Perez will primarily be playing shortstop. I just think it's kind of a PR thing, to be perfectly honest. I think that Gerald Perez continuing to play shortstop is more of a look, this trade wasn't bad type of thing than it was actually the best option. I just think Antonacci's a better shortstop than Perez from everything I saw last season. I'm curious to see how that'll play out. I mean, again, when you're splitting time at shortstop and second base, Gerald Perez might be the starter there, but there might be a point fairly early in the season when Antonacci starts to get more of those innings at shortstop. We'll see what happens, but it sounds like the plan is for Antonacci to mainly be at second and Perez to mainly be at shortstop in Winston this year.
yeah. That's the one affiliate where the middle infield, there's not a glut of middle infielders. I mean,
right.
After those two guys,
There's still guys though. I mean, I think the goal would be to get Ryan Burroughs there at some point during the season. I think
sure.
Eventually he'd be the guy that mixes in potentially, but yeah, I think it's true. I think it's definitely less. There's less depth there compared to the other levels, but it makes sense that both those guys are getting bumped from low A because of the guys coming behind them, right? You kind of have to clear space, right? So it's going to be interesting to see. I think there's, it's going to be packed, but I think that these two are going to be fun to watch. I think Antonacci's going to be fun there. I think Salke's going to be fun there, and then on top of that, I think Winston will be the team that gets the most in-season reinforcements. I think that's the roster that's going to get a lot of other guys throughout the season pushed that way because all those 2024 draft class guys, there's other guys in Canny we'll talk about, but Winston will get a lot of reinforcements throughout the season compared to most other teams, I think. So that's the team that it might be a little bit of a weaker roster all around than Birmingham with the pitching side or Canny's hitting side, right? Those rosters are just really loaded. But at the same time, I do think that it's exciting. It's exciting regardless, and I think that Winston will get more talent throughout the season as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Ryan Burroughs, and right now he's when we talk about Kannapolis, he'll end up being the odd man out. It appears, at least initially. But Winston, you forgot my favorite under the radar guy, Jackson Appel. He'll probably be there.
Yeah.
And of course, Casey Salke, and then some guys from last year like T.J. McCants. I would imagine he might open there, and McConnell, one of the draft picks. So not well-known guys, but guys who could have really.
I think Eddie Park will be there again as well. I think we'll get Eddie. Yeah, I agree. I think we'll get Eddie Park there, and then on the pitching side, I think Aldrin Batista is the guy that we've been talking about for a while. That should be in Winston there to open the rotation. I think he's probably your ace in per se in Winston. So that's somebody who I'm excited to keep watching in Winston. I think he'll be in Birmingham sooner than later, honestly, if he pitches the way he did last year. So we'll see what happens there on that front. But in general. That roster is not quite as loaded as we thought it might be, depending on the way things shook out. But that's because this Canny roster, Jeff. I saw your poll yesterday of asking who's going to be the most fun roster. And as much as Charlotte does have a lot of, big league ready prospects and a lot of talent there, It's got to be Kannapolis for me, man. I think that roster is going to be such a cool blend of talent. The first thing off the bat that I was surprised by is both Nick McLean and Braden Montgomery opening their professional careers in Kannapolis. I mean, come on, how does that outfield and George Walkout? So that outfield of those three, George Walkout was there last year, obviously, but the Walkout, McLean, and Montgomery outfield in Single A is going to be ridiculously fun. I think that's just about as good as you can get for a Single A outfield, honestly. You've got two guys that were, a first round pick in Montgomery last year and a third round pick in McLean, or who were, both guys that didn't play last year. They were coming off injuries in college. They were, whatever. Montgomery was recovering. McLean was getting right in Arizona. Neither of those guys have played a minor league game yet, so I think that's the only reason they're in Kannapolis. Both those guys are going to be perfectly capable of being in Winston sooner than later, but they're going to be in Kannapolis to start the season, which makes that team, real exciting. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's really exciting for sure. What a lineup! And then we haven't even talked about the infield yet. Man, there's another stud that I know you're excited to see.
Yeah, the Caleb Bonham. Caleb Bonham is completely skipping, a full season in the Arizona Complex League. Like last year, you see a lot of high school guys that will play at least the first half, if not the majority of their first full season in Arizona. And now you've got a guy in Caleb Bonham who is expected to make the Candy roster and be the primary shortstop in Kannapolis all season. That was kind of the gauge that Janish gave, was that they want him playing shortstop. He's ready to play shortstop, and he's going to be the shortstop in Kannapolis. And really more than anything, this just makes it very clear how the organization views Caleb Bonham. I think we already knew that when you give a guy $900,000 over slot out of high school in terms of his draft value, right? They gave him his draft slot was $2.1 million. He got a $3 million bonus to sign with the White Sox in the second round last year. You knew that the expectation was high for this guy, but straight to Kannapolis in his first full pro season. He's going to be starting at shortstop. There's just so much to like there. There's just so much, to be excited about with Bonham. We met Bonham. He is a massive dude, just way, for a 19-year-old, ton of strength, a lot to like there in terms of the power upside, just everything, everything he's doing is exciting. I don't think it's, and then next to him is going to be Javier Mogollon at second base, which is awesome. So that middle infield core there, talk about the middle infield duos throughout the organization. This one's going to be real fun. You've got, Mogollon is let's see, I forgot, Mogollon's 18, I think, or maybe he might be 17, to be honest. I think he's 18. Mogollon is 18. And then actually 19. Okay, so they're both 19. Pardon me. They're both 19 years old. But again, two 19-year-olds with a ton to like there. Bonham is this huge shortstop. Mogollon's this really small second baseman. They both pack power. They both have, supposedly pretty good approaches, right? Like, this is just going to be fun. This lineup is going to be so much fun, Jeff, from top down. I can't wait to watch some Candy games in the early weeks of the season.
And just to confirm, Janish confirmed that Mogollon is going to open the season in Kannapolis.
He said primarily at second base. So the primary time at second base. I don't, the wording, is a little tough. I was moving around during the Zoom too, so I was listening, but he said he's going to get the majority of reps at second base. So whether that is, 2 weeks into the season, he starts at second base, or immediately, it sounds like the plan is Bonham and Mogollon will be the middle infield there for pretty much the entire season. I don't know if that necessarily means exactly to start the season, but it did sound like that to me, that it would be Mogollon with Bonham there. So,
and what do you think this means for Ryan Burroughs?
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned Burroughs. As kind of the additional guy there. I think Burroughs is just going to kind of be a floater. My guess is he'll get some reps at third base. He'll get some backup reps at both second and short. But I do think that he is still valued. But it's not going to be. It's going to be hard to get him the same type of innings, that he was getting last year at times, or that you'd want him to get. We'll see what happens. I think there's going to be some. Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out, but I do think he'll still get innings. I think he'll probably play some more third base than he did last year as well.
Okay.
Yeah, that's most of the notes I got. I'm trying to think of the big other things. I think with there's going to be the pitchers. We'll get full rosters next week. I just wanted to kind of give a gauge and a scope on the way things are shaking out. But I think these rosters are going to be fun. All these teams are going to be fun, and I think that especially for those fans that just want to tune into a little bit or just want to know a little bit. pitching in Birmingham and hitting in Kannapolis is what I'll say. I think those are the two facets of the minor league system that are going to be just like unbelievably fun to watch. And if you really want to kind of get a gauge of like what the future of the White Sox looks like, I think those are the two places to go, in my opinion, for just like the highest end talent. And then Charlotte overall. I think Charlotte overall like is like the guys that you will see in Chicago very soon. We're going to see Mydroth and Caro and Teal and Montgomery and Ramos and all these guys in Charlotte. They're in Charlotte now. They'll be in Chicago this year. It's just a matter of when and the 40 man and the timing and the, how ready they are and all that stuff that's still to be determined. But, Charlotte is the breeding place for all these league ready prospects. Meanwhile, your high end pitchers in Birmingham, your high end hitting prospects in Kannapolis, a lot to like, Jeff. I can't wait for you to get to all these media days and have some information. I'm excited to hear from you. I'm excited to hear from, Sergio Santos when you get to talk to him today, get to talk to, Pat Leland next week and all these other guys. So I can't wait to hear all the updates you have. Definitely want to, next week, we're going to in the next 2 weeks, give you plenty of time to share everything you learn at these levels. Cause I'm excited to hear about what's going on at each affiliate for sure.
Yeah, same here. Here we go. We're getting started today.
The season is getting rolling. It's baseball time, folks. So this was a short one. Just wanted to give everybody some updates, but we will be back next week. We are aiming to start recording on Mondays. Hopefully, we're going to be going live. That's something that James and Ian's have always done, is do their podcast on a live stream so people can engage and comment throughout the video. We're going to try to start doing that soon at some point this season. TBD on exactly when, but we will definitely have plenty of content coming in the next few weeks with baseball season getting rolling. Charlotte starts this week. Birmingham starts next week, and then Winston and Candy the week after that.
Sounds great.
All right, Jeff.
See you
next time.
All right, man. Take care.
You too.